Let's go back over to College Green. I'm joined now by Caroline Lucas from the Green Party and Jonathan Edwards from Plaid Cymru. Caroline Lucas, I'll come to you first. What's your overall reaction to the autumn statement?
Well, at a time when economically the country is moving into such uncharted waters with levels of insecurity higher than ever before, I was hoping that from this Chancellor we would have had more policies that would actually protected my constituents in Brighton much better than these will. So we're seeing instead a Chancellor who is committed still to give tax breaks to the richest, tax breaks to the corporations, and is taking away from the poorest in order to spend on that. And then when you add to that the fact that this is a Chancellor that didn't once mention the words climate change, this is in the year that's going to be on record as the hottest ever, a year when we know that we absolutely could be investing in home energy efficiency, creating jobs, getting emissions down, getting people's fuel bills down. There were some real win-wins here that could have been good for people, good for the environment, and again, he just blew it.
Jonathan Edwards, what's the Plaid Cymru view on this?
Well, I think it's the day that the mythical Tory long-term economic plan was shelved in favour of a more short-term economic scramble on the back of very rapidly declining OBR forecasts over the 5 years, which is not just bad news, of course, for the public finances, but in terms of weakening job prospects and in terms of financial well-being, especially when we look at some of the inflation forecasts, which is going to hit disposable income. And I think one of the big striking aspects of the statement that there was no indication from the Chancellor on what his position is going to be in terms of the single market and the customs union going forward.
An extra 400 million for the Welsh Government in this. Any ideas on how you'll spend it?
Well, that's 400 million over 5 years, of course. And when you compare that, about the same amount is going to be spent on renovating the Buckingham Palace, over £5 billion at least on the place behind me. I think it wasn't a very particularly serious fiscal intervention, because if you even went back to the levels of infrastructure investment prior to the crash in 2008, that would be around 1% extra per annum of GDP. That would be 20 billion across the UK and £1 billion extra per annum for Wales. So I think the money that was announced, although welcome, isn't a particularly serious economic intervention.
Caroline Lucas, Philip Hammond confirmed that the starting rate for the 40% tax bracket would rise by 2020 to £50,000. John McDonnell for Labour has backed that. As I understand it, the Green Party's opposed to that. But a lot of people who would benefit from that, they're not rich, they're moderately affluent, at most teachers, police officers, other public sector workers. Why would you be against them getting a fairer deal?
Well, I'm against it because it's essentially being paid for by some of the poorest people who are seeing, for example, the changes on universal credit that are not going to seriously help them. There's still going to be £3 billion worth of cuts to the work allowance of universal credit. So it's being paid for off the backs of some of the poorest people. That's why we're objecting to it. Essentially, this is a budget yet again for the more wealthy, in spite of the fact that only a few short months ago, Theresa May was standing on the doorstep of Downing Street promising us that this was going to be a budget and a country and a government that was going to be putting some of the poorest working class people at its heart. I think this budget demonstrates that that was simply a myth.
All right. Caroline Lucas and Jonathan Edwards, thank you very much for joining us there from College